You filed your taxes, and instead of getting a tax return, you were notified that you owe the IRS money. No! That's what we call tax debt. If you still owe money after you filed your taxes, you might be wondering, but I filed on time. Why do I still owe money? And it's a good question, but basically it means that you didn't pay enough throughout the year, and now the IRS is giving you a bill. Over 800,000 taxpayers end up in tax debt every year, and that doesn't include the 7 million people who don't file on time. That means nearly 8 million people end up in tax debt every year. So, what do you do about it? If you owe money on your taxes this season, there's 4 things you can do. You can pay it back in full, you can request a delay in payment, you can offer a compromise, or you can request an installment agreement. So what exactly is tax debt? It's actually not what happens when you don't file on time, but it can be the outcome of not filing on time, so make sure you do that. You should know that tax debt happens when you don't pay enough throughout the year, or you had a filing mistake, so the IRS is sending you a bill for the money that you didn't pay them throughout the year. When you find out you owe money for taxes and you're now in tax debt, you're required to pay the full amount right then and there. If you don't, there can be fees and other liabilities involved. So you want to make sure that you pay the whole thing back in full. Well, but what if I can't afford my tax debt? It's a question many people ask every year. And while it's not the end of the world, it's important to know what your options are. If you owe money on taxes and you fail to pay back that tax debt, you can be charged interest, and that can really add up. And if you owe tax money at the end of the year and you never pay it back, the IRS can come after you and your assets, which means you risk losing your home, your car, and they can take your paycheck before it ever even hits your account. Yikes! If the balance you owe for taxes is too much and you can't pay it in a lump sum, contact the IRS as soon as possible to see if you can work out some sort of installment or payment plan. If you owe money for your taxes this year and it's just one more type of debt on top of a long list of other types of debts you have, call a credit and debt coach. We can help you understand your debt consolidation options completely free, always free. So what is tax debt interest? Tax debt interest is when the IRS charges you money for not paying back your taxes. It starts at 0.5% and then it goes up 25% every month. Did you know that tax debt charges interest daily? So if you owe money on taxes, you're being charged more than what you owe every single day. Which sounds scary, but the faster you pay it off, the better off you'll be. Tax interest isn't just charged on the original amount of tax debt that you owe. It's charged on your current balance, and if that balance is increasing daily because of interest, then that accumulation will just continue growing. It's a compounding problem, which means you need a solution ASAP. The IRS won't negotiate with you on interest, but they may help work with you on the overall amount of tax debt that you owe. So make sure that you contact them and talk about installment payments, maybe a compromise, or figuring out how to delay the payment altogether. When the IRS discovers that you owe taxes, they'll file a tax return on your behalf to figure out what you're actually liable for. This liability does not include any sort of tax write-offs. So if you have any deductions that you can put in, you'll have to file your own tax return. It's super important that if you're in trouble with your taxes, you talk to a tax attorney. Tax attorneys can help you understand your case and really figure out what the best options for you are. If you're Googling how to settle tax debt, then you probably need to be following us because there are 4 ways that you can reduce your tax debt overall. The most common and easiest way to get rid of tax debt is to pay it off in full. You reduce interest and other penalties, plus you don't have to worry about it anymore. If you can't afford to pay all of your taxes at once, you can request an installment plan, which means that you pay a certain amount monthly over a certain number of months. Now, there is a fee to set this up and you'll be charged interest, but at least it won't be compounding over time and you have a plan to pay off your tax debt. If you're in financial hardship and you can't afford to pay your taxes in full and you can't afford the installment plan, you can offer the IRS a compromise, which means you're offering to pay less than what you owe, but they understand you can't afford to pay it. You have to prove you can't afford an installment plan or to pay it in full. If you can't afford to pay any of your tax debt, you can request a temporary delay. This doesn't get rid of the taxes, and they can still compromise your assets, meaning they could put a lien on your house or your car, something like that. But it does allow you the temporary delay in the meantime to figure out your finances. When it comes to tax debt, before you pay anything, you should make sure that the tax debt is actually yours. You can do this by signing up for free credit monitoring on credit and debt through Identity IQ. Interest is just one of the many things that can add up if you can't afford to pay your taxes. The other thing is there can be a lien on your property, which means that the property is not yours until you pay the tax debt. So it's important to stay in close communication with the IRS and make your payments on time. If you have trouble keeping track of all your debt payments, go to creditanddebt.org and sign up for free to use our Money Sensei Insights. Money Sensei technology gives you alerts for when your payments are due and helps you pay off your debt faster with AI technology. If you owe money on your taxes, the IRS will send you a letter confirming your tax debt. You want to make sure you acknowledge that confirmation immediately to avoid any penalties, interest, or liens on your assets. If you don't pay your tax debt, the IRS can put liens on your property and assets, which means that would make it harder for you to apply for credit. It'll really hurt your credit score, meaning you can't buy a house, a car, even applying for a credit card can become much harder. Owing taxes doesn't directly impact your credit score, but if you miss payments, you don't pay off the tax debt, then those are reported to your credit report and can have an impact. Using IDIQ to monitor your credit report can help you understand if your credit has been impacted by your tax debt. Sign up for free on creditanddebt.org for 90 days of free credit monitoring. If you're wondering whether or not you can file bankruptcy for tax debt, you can. But before you opt for bankruptcy, make sure to call a credit and debt coach to understand all of your options to reduce or eliminate your debt. One of the worst things that results in an unpaid tax debt is a levy on your assets. Unlike a tax lien, which represents a claim on your property, a levy allows people to seize your property and assets. They can take it away from you. Seizure of your property and assets due to tax debt doesn't happen overnight. The most common form of a levy for tax debt is wage garnishment. That basically means the IRS takes a chunk of your paycheck before it ever even hits your bank account. Now, they won't take your whole paycheck. The amount of your paycheck taken will be based on your overall debt amount owed and your income. If your wages are being garnished by the IRS, it's required that they allow you to pay your household expenses. But that doesn't stop them from putting a lien on your home and taking the house altogether. So make sure you understand your options and communicate as best you can for your repayment. Beware of tax scams. There are people impersonating the IRS saying that you owe tax debt and will call you requesting urgent payment. The IRS will never call you requesting payment. The only way to know for certain you owe tax debt is if the IRS sends you validation of that tax debt. If you have received a scam call, make sure to report it on the tax administration website. Luckily, you only have to file your taxes once a year. Unluckily, you have to file your taxes once a year. So the best way to avoid tax debt is to make sure that you're paying enough in your taxes throughout the year and don't end up with a lump sum payment at the end. What a lot of taxpayers do is pay more through the year than they think they might owe in taxes. That means you'll be getting a tax refund instead of making a tax payment and reduces your risk for any tax debt. If you're wondering, should I use my tax refund to pay off debt? Stop wondering. Yes, you should. And if you need help paying off other debt, make sure to call our credit and debt coaches to understand your options for debt consolidation and other types of debt relief. If your employer is unable to file your wages with tax deductions, then open up a separate account specifically for taxes. I know you might be wondering how hard that's going to be to make sure you manage that throughout the year, but we can help if you use Money Sensei technology on creditanddebt.org to manage all of your accounts. It's an easy place to connect your accounts, and then you can see them all in one place. Plus, it's free. The best way to avoid tax debt is to file your taxes on time. If you do this, you avoid penalties and fees. But it's important to know that even if you don't file on time and you get a tax refund, you'll still be required to pay those fees. Now, you can use your tax refund to pay it, but why not use that for something way more fun? Paying your taxes early can help you avoid tax identity theft or someone filing your taxes using your social security number. To avoid that altogether, sign up for IDIQ's identity theft monitoring that you get for free on creditanddebt.org. We get it, tax debt is intimidating, but there's no use in wondering, does tax debt die with you? Or does the IRS forego tax debt after 10 years? There usually tends to be a collection statute expiration date. This means that after that date, the IRS has to forego that debt. The total time for that is 10 years after the date that was first issued. But if you do die before that 10 years is up, that debt will outlive you. So make sure you're eating your Wheaties because the debt doesn't die with you. If you don't like Wheaties, then just make sure you pay back your tax debt. Whether you pay it back in full, request an installment period, or have a commitment to reduce your overall debt, work with the IRS and make sure you understand your options. If you don't work on paying back your taxes, you risk a lien on your property and even a levy if it comes down to that. In order to avoid paying tax debt altogether, just make sure you're paying enough throughout the year. Or if it's not automatically deducted from your wages, then open up a separate account to put money into every month to make sure you have enough at the end of the year. If you have more questions about taxes, money, finances, debt, credit, identity theft, or anything finance related, make sure you hit that subscribe button, that like button, comment, let me know, and we will make sure we answer those questions for you next time on Ask Abby.